Okay, so good afternoon, friends. Welcome to the episode 3. I'm just waiting a few more moments before we begin, as some of our friends join the live session today. And we have been covering on the various issues pertaining to spirituality, the relationship with God, the meaning of life. And these are the common questions that the human heart grapples with. And I believe in the Lord Jesus Christ. I am a Bible reader, and I also read philosophy from various other perspectives. So I have chosen to interact with you all on this platform and bring in various subjects which I believe help you find the answers, um, grow, and provoke your mind to think about these things and read about these things. So today we are going to talk about thinking, thought, and thought is a very important aspect of our life. In fact, it is our thought which is the biggest space we reside in. Um, it's also something which makes us. Um, there is a verse in the Bible. Uh, it's just a verselet, I would say, which says that whatever a person thinks, he becomes. That's what he is. So our thoughts occupy a very important space in our life. I would like to quote some famous philosophers, and here is Ralph Waldo Emerson, who said that every revolution was first a thought in one's mind. Thoughts rule the world. Beware when the great God lets loose a thinker on this planet. So that's the power of the thought. And in whatever space you are operating in your life, I believe your thought life has an impact on that space. So we are all by default thought leaders. Henry Ford said once, thinking is the hardest work there is, which is probably the reason why so few engage in it. Words of wisdom there by this man. And the gentleman said, most people can't think, most of the remainder won't think, and the small fraction who do think mostly can't do it very well. Another gentleman said, all truly wise thoughts have been thought already thousands of times. But to make them truly ours, we must think them over again honestly till they take root in our personal experience. And the last one, gentleman named William James, he says, man lives only one small room of the enormous house of his thought life. A great many people think they are thinking when they are merely rearranging their prejudices. So, what these quotes basically tell us is that a lot of us need to learn to think correctly. I'm reading one passage from the Bible, Philippians chapter 4, verse 8 says, finally, brethren, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is of good repute, if there is any excellence and if anything worthy of praise, dwell on these things. So, Paul is encouraging people here, the followers of Christ, the people who want to know God more, people who are walking with God. He's encouraging them to think in a certain way. and he gives that boundary and the beautiful words he used. He's also speaking in context of people who are very anxious, people who are very worried. There are things which are going on in their lives which are matters of concern. And in that context, Paul is encouraging them to think in a certain way. Now, the problem with the thinking, and as we are pursuing orthodoxy by Mr. G.K. Chesterton, and we are in the chapter 3, which he titles as Suicide of Thought. And that's a very interesting title, very difficult to read chapter also, I acknowledge, and that's the reason we will give this subject 2 episodes. We are going to bring up this subject again in the next week with another perspective, and I will title that Imagination. But the suicide, the thought itself, able to commit suicide, one generation of people, that's what Mr. Chesterton brings up. He says one generation of people are able to destroy the ability of the next generation to think. That's amazing. So we will talk about it a little bit further. But there is a problem. In certain way, thinking can be very difficult. For example, if I tell you at the moment, don't think about an elephant, and I know, and you can confess that right at that time when I instructed you not to think about the elephant, that's when you have thought about the elephant. So it's intriguing that it seems like we are unable to control our own thinking. So how does it work? And one thought which I'm going to bring to you this morning, and which might be fresh for you, and that is that thinking is not a scalar, it is vector. Now, some of you who are not science oriented, you might find it very, um, uh, unfamiliar. So, in science, in physics, there are those, uh, uh, you know, mm, there are those parameters of measurement which have only magnitude, which means you weigh something, you weigh it in kgs or pounds or grams. So it has only magnitude. Those quantities, those variables are called scalars. But when some particular parameter requires, apart from the magnitude, also a direction, then it is called vector. So, what I'm trying to say is that thoughts in themselves are not only, um, they do not only have magnitude. They, in terms of quality, thoughts have magnitude as well as direction. So, uh, so I have another way to bring that perspective is thoughts are often expressed in terms of seeds and trees and fruit, and that's amazing. Now there is a direction to those thoughts. Either there is a growth or there is a degrowth. And I'll take you, uh, just to illustrate this quickly, to a story which Jesus told. And that's in Luke chapter 19. And that's a parable, and a large parable at that. Probably you are familiar. But for the benefit of those of our viewers who have probably never read it, never heard it, let's hear this parable. Jesus told it himself. While they were listening to these things, Jesus went on to tell a parable because he was near Jerusalem and they supposed that the kingdom of God was going to appear immediately. Now, Jesus was a master teacher. Jesus knew, and he was teaching to the common masses, which means a lot of his listeners were not necessarily scholars. Hence, he used very simple illustration from day-to-day lives. Not that those illustrations were simple in terms of the content of their conclusion. That's not right. Jesus' teachings were profound. Even the scholars of the day were dumbfounded when Jesus started speaking. But he often used his methodology was to cater to the masses. So he was using a story from a day to day life, and those were called parables. Now, these were not real life stories, these were imaginary stories framed by the author of the story in order to prove his point. And often these parables had some strange elements to those. And if you are a student of the Bible, you should look for those strange elements in specific parables which Jesus taught, because a lot of those parables, though they were set up in a context which was absolutely common man's context, but some aspects of the some elements of that parable would be absolutely hyperbolic, which would normally not happen, and we will see it here. So, noble man went to a distant country to receive a kingdom for himself and then return. And this is actually trying to illustrate what is going to go happen with Jesus. Jesus had come, he is God himself, he has incarnated, he has come to this earth, he is going to go to the cross, and he was telling his disciples time and again that this is the fate he is going to go through, that he is going to pay for the sins of the whole world on that cross, and that's the reason he came for. And everybody who had an expectation of a Messiah coming in this world, they were expecting the Messiah to be the king. So he's trying to explain to them that yes, I am going to be the king, but not in this visit of mine. I'm going to go back, receive the kingdom, and come back again. So here is this, and he's telling that in the form of a parable, like an average common man story. So this noble man is going to a distant country to receive the kingdom, and he called 10 of his slaves and gave them 10 minas. Mina is the currency of the day, and said to them, "Do business with this until I come back." And that's a beautiful picture of us, people who want to follow God, people who are disciples of Christ. We have been given opportunities to live a kind of life which displays the character of God, which can be revealing to people, which can also uh, cherish and protect the creation of God. So these are the people who have been given responsibilities and opportunities. So, but his citizens hated him and sent a delegation after him, saying, "We do not want this man to reign over us." When he returned after receiving, so there is two that divides the world into two parts. One is the people who want the authentic ruler to rule his kingdom. The other group, they don't want that ruler to rule the kingdom, and they have their own reasons for it. When he returned after receiving the kingdom, he ordered that these slaves to whom he had given the money be called to him, so that he might know what business they had done. The first appeared, saying, "Master, your mina has made 10 minas more. Congratulations! Wow, good business." And he said to him, "Well done, good slave, because you have been faithful in very little thing, you are to be in authority over 10 cities." So he is now in the kingdom. This guy is being given position because he used what was given to him well. Next guy, he comes, he says, "Your mina, master, has made 5 minas." And he said to him also, "And you are to be over 5 cities." Another came, saying, and here is the point of the parable. Now, this is where hyperbole comes. This is where what normally would not happen. He says, uh, "Master, here is your mina, which I kept put away in a handkerchief. For I was afraid of you, because you are an exacting man, you are a hard man, you are a tough man. You take up what you did not lay down, and reap what you did not sow." He said to him, "By your own words I will judge you. You worthless slave, did you know that I am an exacting man? taking of what I did not lay down and reaping what I did not sow, then why didn't you put my money in the bank? And having come, I would have collected it with interest. So he's giving the logic that, okay, you thought I'm a very tough guy, I'm a very demanding guy, I'm not the right kind of boss, and this is the picture of God, is the picture of nature of God. Is this man thinks about God in a certain way? He thinks he may have ideas that God is very holy, God is very righteous, God is a great judge, but he what he's not understanding. And so this man is saying, you are a very demanding man. So what I did was, instead of taking risk with what you did, I played safe. I put this in a handkerchief, I kept it buried safely, and now here is your Mina back. And this is the mentality of works. I say, okay, I know I have a moral code deep within my conscience, so I need to be a good man. So I kind of try to live a life which is pretty decent. But all of us know that none of us can stay away from being a sinner. We all sin at some point of time in life, in fact very often in life. And what we do is, then we try to compensate, we try to kind of balance the equation, which never really gets balanced, and we know it deep within our heart, and then we try to act. So this man could not take the risk, this man did not enjoy life, this man did not go all out with what God had given him. Instead, he just played it safe, and he has the reason for it, because his understanding of the nature of his master was wrong. And master says, okay, by your own words you will be judged. So you consider me a strict man, let me be a little bit strict with you, right? And then he said to the bystanders, take the mina away from him and give it to the one who has 10 minas. Oh my God, this doesn't normally happen, right? So this is a common man's story, common man's situation, context. And here Jesus brings the contrast, paradox, the something which is strange, which normally doesn't happen. Why at all this guy would give this extra mina to the guy who has 10? And the bystanders say, he already has 10 minas, master. And then he says, I tell you that to everyone who has, more shall be given. But from the one who does not have, even what he does have shall be taken away. Wow. So here is the thing. This is the principle of grace. Grace does not operate on the principle of works. Bible talks about salvation. Our relationship with God is on the basis of grace. God does not measure us on the basis of our works. God does not give us everything we deserve. Sometimes people when they pursue the relationship with God, this question comes very often: why did God do this to me? Or why did this happen to me? I didn't deserve something like this. And the answer to that is, you cannot live life on the basis of this deserving element. Because if we honestly got everything we deserve, we were in trouble. We were really in trouble. If God gave us punishment for every bad deed and bad thought which we have entertained, uh, none of us would stand. None of us would survive. But God does not deal with us like that. God deals with us in grace. To him who has, more shall be given. That's the principle of grace. Anyway, so my idea of illustrating this was, what's the difference between the first two men who multiplied the mina and this last man who did not, who played it safe? It was all in the thinking. And I would like to encourage you today, like in whatever space you are, and we would like these messages to be practical to you. It's not just understanding spirituality, it's about life which we live, it's about the space which you are engaging in. Maybe some of you are leading maybe a company, or a household, or a social work. I don't know. But in whatever space you are in, there is a space for thought leaders, people who engage in a proper kind of thinking, people who at first think. Yeah, I quoted you some awesome people like Henry Ford and all, was saying thinking is a hard work and not everybody does it. People want it easy. You want to copy somebody else's thoughts. But until you internalize yourself, until you make it a habit, until you learn to think, I don't care which space you are in. You may be in technology, you may be in business, you may be in finance. You need to be a thinker. And God, this mind has been given to us by God. Somebody said it, we all were born with an intelligent. So intelligence is by intellect is by birth, but thinking is a skill which needs to be learned. And as I said, thinking is a vector, it's not a scalar, which means there is a direction. Thinking takes a direction. Today, your thought life today is a product of your thought life of yesterday's. There is a direction. You are going somewhere, right? And you better be going in the right direction, right? You better be learning to think correctly. So with that, I move to another subject, and that subject is like this art of thinking. Why are we bringing the art of thinking in the subject of spirituality? Let's go to Psalm chapter 1. This is a profound book. I love this book, and if you are a new to the Bible, then probably you would love to start here. I know of a friend who started reading the Bible recently, and he is falling in love with Christ, and he has been telling me he loves reading Psalms. And that's my experience too, because these are cries of the human heart, these are prayers, these are thoughts. I would say, I would define Psalms like this: these are spiritual men uh, who are thinking about God, and their thoughts are turning into prayer. So that's how Psalms are. So this Psalm chapter 1 verse 2, it says, he's talking about a man, a blessed man. And he says, his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law he meditates day and night. So this is the word meditation. I am bringing this concept, and I believe in next 5 minutes you will gain something about this concept. He will be like a tree firmly planted by the streams of water, which yields its fruit in its season, and its leaf does not wither, and in whatever he does, he prospers. What a picture it is. So this seems to suggest the word of God, the Bible is suggesting us that we ought to have a habit of meditation. We must, men, women, leaders, workers, whoever you are, you must, for your own soul's sake, give yourself time. Allocate some part of the day. And I'm not saying, I'm not talking religiously. It doesn't have to have certain pattern. But for your own sake, just stop, sit, stand. I don't care how you do it, but give yourself time to think. Think about things. And I'm not even talking just you have to read this. Yeah, reading is good because it will give you some seeds to grow. But and it can be Bible. It if it is Bible, it's great. But I would also say that you can do a lot more reading even apart from the Bible. And it's not just about the reading. It's about um, assimilating what's going on in your life. It's about what is God teaching you. Give yourself time. In Christian circles, it's called the time of devotions. I don't care what you call it, but that quiet time, the time where you think, time where you meditate, and it doesn't have to have a certain. You don't need to go on Google or go on YouTube and try and find out what is meditation. Meditation is basically reworking, rethinking, right? And it has, and it's you, it's your full element. It's not just about thinking only certain things. It's about what's going on in your life. What are the things which you are going to handle very soon? What is the word which you read? All of it can be part of your meditation. So that's one. Make it your routine, keep it simple. Don't try to learn the tricks. Just keep it simple. God has given us a mind, and our mind knows how to think. Normally we don't give our mind a space to think. So give the mind that space. The second one is in John chapter 4, verse 24. And this is, okay, no, uh, I will go to Romans chapter 12 before I go to this is Paul once again encouraging some believers, and he says, "I urge you, brethren, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies a living and holy sacrifice, acceptable to God, which is your spiritual service of worship." Now, dear friends, I bring to you the subject of worship, and worship and thinking are very interconnected. And if you are hearing it for the first time, it sounds strange to you. I would rather have it that way. Worship and thinking are very, very, very connected. Hmm. Verse 2, and do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. What is renewing of your mind? It's rethinking, it's thinking again. And so that you may be able to prove what is the will of God, which is good and acceptable and perfect. So, dear friends, Jesus, when he met a woman near the well in John chapter 4, and they got engaged into a conversation, he offered to give her living water. And he promised that if you drink of this water, you will never thirst again. And they got into a conversation on the subject of worship. And Jesus said it. He said, God wants worshippers who will worship in him in spirit and truth. Now, there is this element. Now, understand this. Truth pertains to mind, your thoughts, and spirit pertains to what we talked the last week, that intangible element within humans, which becomes alive when you have a relationship with God. So there is a relationship between spirit and mind, and that relationship translates into something called worship. And this worship, now, people when think about worship, they think about many things in various religions, and people think of sacrifices, giving money, taking pain, doing hard things, waking up early morning, getting into cold water, walking without sandals for kilometers and kilometers. In Christian circles, it will be probably singing and worship and music and everything. But here it is. Worship is primarily connected with what you are processing in your mind about God. What do you think about God? And in the parable which we read, the third man did not know how to worship. That was his problem. And we need to learn to become true worshippers who know how to worship God in spirit and truth, right? And that's where our mind, that's where our thought comes into the picture. I can worship God by thinking about him. I can worship God by thinking, by th- thinking about knowing him. That's interesting, right? So what I'm saying is, if I in my mind I'm saying, God, I want to know you, it's worship. It's worship. It's a very pure form of worship. Now there is, I would love to go on a little bit more. Okay, let me say this. Worship is also this thought, and worship is also a two-way phenomena. It cannot be one-way thing. This is interesting. I mean, in certain philosophical and religious systems, people would say some things, repeat some a priest is saying something, and they will repeat it without understanding it, and they consider it worship. But I don't believe so. It cannot work like that. Or I go and I worship an inanimate object, uh, and just like it doesn't have to be meaningful, and that's not how Bible proposes worship. Bible proposes worship as a form of praise, adoration, like, or it's almost like a romance, and it's a mutual praise. So it's not just about we praising God. Now I'm saying something very, very unconventional. It's not just about me praising God, it's also about me hearing God praising me. And that's worship, because it's a romance, it's a relationship, it's a symphony, and we can grow in it in our thought life. And that's an amazing, it's a peak of the thought life. There is, in closing, I will just, just relate to one story. and that story is I just read it on internet. I don't know so much about the truth of the story, but it is a published story. There was this man, a Christian man, a very devout Christian man, and who used to do every morning his daily devotionals, and he would sit with his Bible with closed eyes, praying to God and reading his Bible. And he also had a cat, and sometimes the cat would come and sit near him, and sometimes the cat would go get a little cozy and start disturbing him. So he came up with a plan. What he did was, he put a board on his bed and tied the cat with her leash, and the cat very quietly sat on his bed, because she otherwise did not get the opportunity to sit on his bed. But this became a daily ritual. He would sit with his Bible, pray, spend time with God in meditation, and cat will sleep on his bed. So then the man died, and his son went to work to a city. Son wanted to continue his father's tradition, so but the city life was difficult. So son started doing his 15 minutes devotional quickly, and then before getting ready for work, and he would again tie the cat to the bed, and the cat would sleep on the bed. By the time the next generation passed, and his son was a youngster, media and digital man, and he did not have time in his life. So what he used to do is, when he used to go to washroom, he used to tie the cat to the bed, and cat would sleep on the bed. But devotions were gone, and he thought he has carried the family's tradition. And this is what happens in worship a lot of times. People become ritualistic and they carry the tradition, but lose the content. And we want to be the ones who who are thoughtful, who think about what we think, who think about what we do. And that's an amazing thing. And God helps us, and uh, we grow, because thought has a direction, right? So, thank you very much. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate those of you who are here. I would love if you like anything, please feel free to write in the chat box. I would also get a feedback on what kind of content is being appreciated. So definitely, if you can take time, 10-15 seconds, and write whatever you like, or whatever you would like to change in this podcast, you're welcome to share. It's too early, so I'm not also insisting on anything. You can take your time as well. But thanks for being here. I'll see you next week, same time, 3 p.m. Sunday afternoon Indian time, and we will be talking about the subject of imagination. So until then, have a great week ahead, dear friends. Thanks for being here. God bless you.